As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Let's camera action, I'm ready to go.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
I just want to welcome everybody to the Tom Ficklin Show here at 103.5 FM. Actually, Tom is actually doing great things here in our community, and we definitely want to pay him his homage for all the things that he have done. Actually, right now, I have three prominent brothers on this line. We're going to be getting real deep into actually what's happening here in New Haven in our communities as our young brothers are still killing each other. So, you know, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the time to introduce and let our brothers introduce themselves for themselves. Nobody know them better than they self. So I'm going to go right over here to my left, and I'm going to start with Sean Reeves. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us why this act of crime prevention is so important to you.
Peace, and blessings, everybody. My name is Sean On Deck Reeves Sr. I'm the Minister of Information, co-founder of organization Sport Academy. That word sport is an acronym. It stands for Street Poets Cipher Real Truth. I'm also a local community superhero, and I'm a father to a slain son in the city of New Haven due to gun violence in 2011, one of our largest gun violence years.
Thank you, Sean. I'm gonna go right over to my right. I have a very prominent brother from Ice to Beef. I'm gonna let Chaz come on right now and introduce himself and why it's so important, once again, why crime prevention in our community is so important.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Chaz Carmen. I am the president of Ice to Beef New Haven, Ice to Beef Waterbury. I'm also the in-school solutions coordinator over at Barnard School.
And why is crime prevention so important to you, Chaz?
Well, you know, I grew up in this environment, right? And my focus is working with the younger generation and teaching the younger generation that their decisions matter. You know, crime prevention is really important because our children are growing up in the midst of this and learning, you know, these ways of life. And our goal is to work with the younger generation and get them to start making positive decisions and get them to choose the right path. And that'll change what's happening in our future because they inherit it. So it's very important to me because we have to work with our youth to get our youth to change our future for us.
That's so important. And we definitely going to see how we're going to get to the point to get this achieved. I'm looking down at my immediate left. I got a good brother on the line. I got Leonard. Leonard, can you just come on and tell us about yourself and why crime prevention in this community is so important to you?
All right, good morning. I'm Leonard Jihad, Leonard Jihad, Executive Director of Connecticut Violence Intervention Program. And now we're contracted to work with youth. We talk about youth, we're talking about the catchment age of 13 to 25 that are engaged in risky activity in the community. So it could be, you know, group or so-called gang involvement, shooters, being a victim of community violence, and, anything that puts them at risk or puts the community at risk. So my background, I worked in corrections, probation. I retired in 2015 from CSSD adult probation. So my perspective is different. I just see, you know, I didn't live the life. I just seen how this impacted, you know, the families, the victims, the whole comprehensive impact of, you know, community and urban violence. And even when, you know, we respond to the hospital, we have a contract with New Haven Hospital that we respond after community violence. You know, I see the trauma and the impact that has not only on the victim, but also their friends, their family, you know, and the resulting trauma. So that's my stake in it. And that's why I continue to fight and struggle, you know, within the urban violence.
Thank you, Leonard. You know, before we came on, actually, everybody, me and Sean was actually starting to really get into this thing a little early. And I kind of want to go back to that. What I mentioned to Sean and to the other brothers that's actually on the line is that I come from Grand Rapids, Michigan, pretty much a wealthy city. And everybody thinks that crime violence is only integrated into the ghettos and inner cities of African Americans. But what I've mentioned is that our kids in Grand Rapids come from parents that are doctors and lawyers, a very prominent city where our ghettos are pretty much middle-class neighborhoods. But Sean gave a great perspective, and I'm just going to lean it back over to Sean to just go back to that perspective that he was talking about before we came on.
Oh, yeah, so I was just mentioning the fact that it's not that they don't come from prominent families. It's the culture that they're attached to, because it's what they can relate to at the moment. No matter how much money you may have, if you're in an area or you're still living in a world where the color of your skin determines a lot of what you still can't and cannot do, at the end of the day, those kids relate to what they relate to. They don't relate to a world that doesn't embrace them. They relate to the world that embraces them. Their parents just don't have an understanding, and they're giving them the best life that they possibly can, but it doesn't come with a positive culture attachment that they can relate to.
I agree. Chaz, I noticed that you with Ice the Beef, how do you, hearing what Sean just said, how do you guys what do you actually do in your organization to kind of help our kids see a better way, a better light?
And that's so true what Sean said. We try to focus on, conflict management, anger management, what we call our 5 R's. We also try to focus on turning the youth into kind of like community organizers, public speakers, really showing them that the decisions that they make every day really matter, right? Because, someone gets shot, somebody made a decision, right? Racism, at some point you get older, it becomes a decision. Police brutality, somebody made a decision, right? So we really understand that it's big that we teach them how to make right decisions, and understand if you make a mistake, you can forgive, let it go and move on. So we try to not only foster that decision making, but okay, how do you do an interview, right? We have them, every one of my staff members have been interviewed by teenagers, right? You know how to go conduct yourself an interview because you held them, right? You know how to make better decisions and organize yourself because you organize a whole entire event and gave away backpacks and PPP supplies and things like that. And once the event is over, you realize, wait, we just did something really good. If I can organize this whole community situation, then I can organize myself to get to class, right? And we utilize those as teachable moments. So really fostering their decision-making and understanding their voice truly matters, and the decisions they make really, really matter, because in the heat of the moment, that one decision could, change your entire life and many families' lives.
I agree. I noticed, Leonard, you said you had a different perspective and kind of your approach to this particular situation. Kind of what is that perspective and kind of how you guys actually work in the community to make that change as well?
So it's just my lens, coming from my background, my personal background, because I came from a 2-parent home, middle class, everything. But, we always took care of each other. We took care of our families who came up from down south and everything. So we always had that culture of, of helping and assisting. And as soon as everyone grew up and grew out, we all got foster kids. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a foster dad. My sisters are foster parents, and and my mom's a foster mom also. So we always had, just that culture, of helping people, and then within their challenges, and until they get into adulthood on their own. So it's just with that. I'm just saying I was never like in the streets or anything else like that, and I never claimed to be. The people that work with me have been in the streets, so I can give one perspective. This is what I've seen as a correction officer. This is the impact that incarceration has, on the individual and their families coming to visit, the children of incarcerated parents and everything. And then I went from there, I worked parole for a year, then I went to probation. And then, again, just trying to work and assist. And I'm a football coach too. So you just try to motivate people, motivate kids and everything. And just like Brother Chad said, you try to minimize the risk, try to give them those tools and everything, because just like you said, if you're doing an interview, and it's funny, I was talking to some police officers this morning at breakfast, and they were saying that they think they're ready for interviews and everything, but they're not really ready. They have to be trained to be ready. So they hire consultants and everything to get them ready. Because right now, if I say, what would your boss say about you? Or give me your 3 greatest strengths. The first thing out of your mouth is usually you say, no, you want to be polished, you want to be sharp. And the more you practice it, the better you are, the better your presentation is. So just like Brother Chad said, so if you're having an interview, they do mock interviews, they get you ready. I've been here before. I've had this question before. I know how to answer that question. So I say all that to say, when I worked probation, we looked at this group of kids. It was at the time, they were doing the Raise the Age initiative, and there was 16 and 17-year-olds who were treated in the adult arena, which was totally wrong. So if the kid smoked weed, he was in substance abuse groups with heroin addicts from Vietnam, you know what I mean? So it was just wrong that the way they were treating youth. So when we did our assessment, we found that there were 3 factors. We call them criminogenic factors why kids get in trouble. Dysfunctional family, negative attitude, and negative peer group. Not surprised. Not surprised at all.
It's a principle of somewhat early childhood education, right? If you don't give a kid critical thinking skills and decision making skills early in life, then when critical things happen, or all those functions in life that take you by surprise, they don't have the means to process through it, right? So they become reactionary, and usually it's stemmed off emotions. I'm just going to take a step back and talk a little bit about myself, because I've been on this whole roller coaster. I was once selling drugs in the community and using guns, right? I'm a 3-time convicted felon. Last time I did 8 years for my final charges were criminal attempted assault on police officers, 20 counts I had. A drug raid at my house, I started shooting off the firearm at police, thinking that it was people that was after me early in the morning, right? So on the flip side of that, I done did all of this stuff in the streets, ran around with all of these gentlemen for all of these years, come home, become a carpenter, start becoming an entrepreneur, get a business in Bridgeport, myself, my brother, and my cousin, Ready for Print, which was in, we opened up a business during the recession, 2008. My son was killed in 2011. By 2012, pretty much everything was shut down. My whole entire life had to take a shift, in a sense. I had to make a decision on whether I was going to be the same beast in the streets that I used to be, or if I was going to try and do something different, because the lives that I was planning on taking for all of my son's friends, and children and friends of mine's children, right? So now I promote violence prevention, working with people like Project Longevity since 2015, and things like that, and just talking to my community members. It's always a conversation about we can do better, right? Something has to stop in order for something new to begin. And if we keep perpetuating violence, then it's never going to end, and we'll never begin to figure out how can we transform what we currently see. And I said all of that to say these gentlemen, that's a job for most of these gentlemen. They start off as, just people trying to get in the game and make money to feed themselves or feed their families and stuff like that. But they don't understand that violence and gun violence comes with drug activity, comes with the drug game, right? It's a part of that lifestyle. So we have to figure out, how do we get them to alter a whole entire lifestyle that normally provides for them? And they look at it as a job, in a sense, most of them gentlemen, every day, because they get up and they pump that beat like clockwork. But how do we transform that and get them into more sustainable practices? Our school systems failing our kids. They're not creating any sustainable youth. Most of our kids are 2 and 3 grade levels behind in math and reading, along with comprehension skills and all the other traumas that they experience along the way, right? So how do we alter that? It all stems from early childhood education. We use chess as a component to create critical thinkers and decision makers. The earlier a kid can learn how to process through problems, the easier it is for them to deal with bullies at school and other things that come their way, right? It gives them incentives and allows them to see goals further down the line for themselves, and realize they don't have to bend rules to obtain them or break the rules, but rules are bendable. So, When we say violence prevention, we can't wait till the violence happens. We have to start early and figure out how do we build these kids up over 20 years so that way they don't become the new set of violent kids, right? Because we can't stop the ones that are here now. They're already in play. The only thing we can do is ask them to alter their lifestyles and give them the tools and necessities to do it in hopes that they change. Everybody has to change themselves. We can't change anybody.
I agree with that. I think that's powerful, and thank you for saying that. I actually want to come back to Leonard. You were saying some things that I kind of wanted you to finish that statement.
I was just saying that if you can address those factors, the family. So, so-called gangs, and you're from Grand Rapids, so, your gangs are different from our so-called gangs. We have local gangs. We really don't have gangs, national networks calling shots in New Haven, But I've been to some trainings with some brothers from Grand Rapids. My boy JD, he runs an outreach program similar to mine in Grand Rapids. But so you do have gangs, like groups that are doing negative things, but they're not traditional gangs. But gangs call themselves family. That's what they call themselves. So if you're not getting that love and attention and that whole structure, that network at home, you're going to go on the community, to get that, and it is, it's single parent homes, it's homes with both mother and father in there, but, just something like the network or, the structure of the family isn't strong enough, to keep them away. You know what I mean? So, dysfunctional family, attitude, you're negative against, convention, church, school, employment, things that are pro-social, things that can take you to the next level. And, the negative peer group, like I said, if you're sleeping roses, you probably smell like roses. And, negatively, kids learn best from each other. And I'm glad, Chaz is doing that, to having kids, critique each other, learn from each other, because that peer group, we can't touch it. If it's that strong and if your home network isn't strong enough, they're going to be influenced, by their peers. So those are the things that we attack. And it's like Shaw said, if you can address those certain issues, those triggers, back in the day, if someone said to me, your mother, what?
It was on and popping. Yeah, it was on and popping.
But right now, if you tell a kid says to another kid, SMD, it's on. Or if you're not from the Ville and someone from an outside area says dead villains on site, you can't talk about people from the Ville, especially the dead ones, that we're memorializing, and you're not from the Ville. That's disrespectful. So if you can model those behaviors and practice them, so it's not like, the first time this happens when you're in a bus and someone says dead villains, I got to react negatively. But if you can practice that in a structured environment with some professionals, you say, okay, somebody said that, how are you going to react? What's your riskiest thought? What are your other options? What's the worst thing that can happen if you attack them with your riskiest thought by assaulting them? What's the worst thing that can happen? And those are things that they play out in those groups and everything. And it does work because the kids tell me that it worked. They'll say, listen, I had this opportunity, this happened, but I thought about what you said. I just stopped. I took a deep breath. I grasped it. Whatever it takes, you know what I'm saying? So, and we need it as adults. People say, it's the kids. Let someone cut you off on the highway or cut you off on the street. We're educated professionals. How do we respond? Oftentimes we respond negatively, So, there's things that we have. I hate to use the word evidence-based. Some of this stuff is evidence-based, and other evidence we created. We know that it works here in the community. We just need to get the resources and everything behind it. Though Chaz's group right now, I'm older than both of them, and I want them to take over. I want their programs to expand. I want someone their age or even younger to take over my program in a few years. And I just want to grant write and, consult and help them out, but, they have the energy and everything behind it, so, we know what we need to do. We just got to get the resources and everything behind it. And I want to get any resources or any help that I can lend to these brothers. I can throw a lob, so they can slam dunk at home. I'll definitely do it, because, it's not their word, it's their actions, that I've seen in the community, like everyone said.
Wow, that was powerful. You know what? That makes me think, Chaz, as I come back to you. Me and Chaz had just a brief conversation last week at a youth event that we had down by Beulah Church, and I told him then that it's not enough of people like you all here in the community that are actually involved in what you're talking about right now. Chaz, kind of expand on that. Kind of what do you see are the next steps, things that we should be doing to assist you, and of course Sean and Leonard in kind of the efforts that you're making in crime prevention in this community.
So I want to touch base and piggyback off a couple points real quick, and I'm gonna go really fast. Like that event we had last week that the youth created, right? It was a vaccination event. It had 75 people get vaccinated, and you know they ran the event, right? They called everybody on the stage, and when the event was over, and they had their debrief, seeing the light bulbs go off, like look what we just did, look how many people we got vaccinated, you know, whatever the point of the event, et cetera, that they're creating, when they see the what happened after, right? That's the push for them to go, you know, wow, we had the mayor and the person running for mayor speaking, we had all, you know, they created that. They had the idea and it came together. They went to all the meetings with all the people and they, you know, they led the charge, right? And those kind of things foster that positive decision making, right? It fosters that hope. And one of the things we lack, you know, we gotta remember this is a systematic thing that's going on in our neighborhood. This ain't just something that's, you know, has got started before me, before Sean, before all of us on this thing. This is way before us. We just inherited what's been going on, and we're kind of sifting through this life, right? And trying to correct, you know, systems that were meant to have us where we are. But also with that, in the neighborhoods, if you live in poverty, you don't see the hope that you see in affluent community. You know, everybody have this and that and whatever. You know, some people have something and some don't. You know, and it's just what it is. And a lot of these things have become so normal, right? It's normacy. You start by 3-4 years old, you're used to gunshots. You know, you're used to seeing things come out your house or seeing camels on the ground. You know, these things have become so normalized in our neighborhoods across America that you gotta understand that this has been set up this way. And now how do we siphon through that and work through that and make that change happen? One of the things we do, we start to work and use restorative practices, right? Social emotional learning. These are the things that the schools are starting to take a stance on. But our whole thing is changing that into community, right? That's our push for the next 10 years. How do we make this turn? We have some big people in those departments working with us, SEL and restorative practices. And how do we teach a parent to use social emotional learning and address trauma in the house? Right? How can we train parents to be able to address that trauma? That training ain't that bad. It's just a few trainings you got to take to get the understanding. And now these are measures that you can use in your home. And that's what we're starting to do is how do we teach parents in the parent program, fathering program, how we teach parents how to do trauma services themselves, right? Instead of having to wait for somebody to come, you've been training it, you can work on it. And then restorative practices is how do you build relationships, right? With people in your community. How do you build relationships with police department? How do you build a relationship with your own kid that you may have a disconnect with, right? These are things that we're starting to bring to the forefront that not only can we do these in schools, but we are literally the group that's going to knock on doors to address the absentee crisis, right? And do wellness visits on the families. We're doing social emotional learning, restorative practices on the door, right? So how do we train other people in the community to be able to do that and understand that, we have trauma in these neighborhoods, but have families be able to address some of the trauma. It's it's already a new way of parenting going on, right? So now we have to rejuvenate how we teach parents to be parents. Once you have a kid, automatically, I'm a parent. That's it. I got it. I know as a single parent, it was not easy to turn into a single parent and how to do these things by myself, right? But if I had some kind of trainers on that, I think I would have been even better. I think I got lucky because I went to school for early child education, and I was trying those things on my kids, like what the book was saying. Let's see if that's real. And a lot of the stuff was real. I was like Sean was saying, I was really trying that stuff. And maybe in early child education, we need to add in some of these trauma situations while we teach people how to teach kids. And with that also, you got to meet the kids where they are. Everybody is in a different situation, even though they're all going through kind of the same things. But once you talk to that kid, you realize, oh, this is totally different, right? And now how do I find out what is your thing and how do I sponge on that? June 26th, we're on the Green Arts and Ideas Festival. They're doing Romeo and Juliet, authentic lines and everything, right? And I didn't think you were going to go for it, but they are in love with it. And we, some of them actors. So let's create that. You play ball, let's create that. You play, I met a group of wrestlers in the Manor, and I'm like, okay, come on to the building, go wrestle. I mean, and then we start to have those conversations, like 10 teenagers, like 18 to, like 17 to 19, like that whole wrestling league. So, then our building, what we do in our buildings, when our building's back open, they'll have their whole WrestleMania thing going on in the building. Whatever it is you're doing, we have to meet you where you are and try to foster that. And then inside of that, how you make better decisions. How do you do this? How do you calm down? How do you and people are like, well, no, they're doing wrestling. Wrestling is this. These 10 guys out here in the back, in the back of the Manor with a whole ring. Come on, guys. How can we help you and get to the next level?
Resources, man. Resources. We our community have lacked resources my whole entire life, right? We've been stripped of resources. When I first grew up, we had community centers all over the city. By the time I was 15, we didn't have any community centers in the city except for the Boys and Girls Club. And at a certain age, you no longer could go inside of that building because it became basically early childhood situations, right? And a paying system at that. So if your parents couldn't afford to pay, you couldn't go play, right? But resources, a lack of resources is extremely has always been part of the problem here for organizations like mine. We can't. All the resources come from the top down, and they expect those entities to extend a helping hand to organizations like ours. To teach a kid chess in a manner that can help them really start to articulate what's in their mind, we can't do on a 2-hour time frame, 2 days a week. There's no reiterated learning in that. There's skip learning. When they go home, they got to deal with all the other patterns that they've already been attracted and attached to, and then we got to try to get them back and bring them back again, right? So, to empower organizations like mine and other organizations that are really boots down on the ground inside of the community, but have no or little to no resources, is going to be huge at this particular point, because we are the parents, we are the community members, we are the ones that really try to do more of the preventative maintenance and the maintenance ahead of time. But it's difficult when you got to go and work 16 hours and make sure you can take care of your kids at home and still put that work in, right? As a volunteer, when other organizations are not volunteering their time, they're getting paid for their time to do the work that they're supposed to be doing or doing, right? So again, we have to look at how resources are distributed throughout the community, whom they're being distributed to, and then we really start having to hold these people accountable, because outcomes matter. Numbers don't lie. That's the one thing in this life that won't ever lie to you, is the numbers. So when people are not being able to present good numbers, either one or two things happening. They're not good bookkeepers, or they're not doing what they're saying that they're doing, right? But it's easy to really hold people accountable.
So if I just jump right there.
Before you go, Chaz, before you go, I just want to make sure that Maurice Williams is now on the call. Glad to see you, brother, that he was able to make it on. Can you just, before Chaz, go ahead, Maurice, did you just want to add anything to what you just heard, or kind of your own experience as well?
One thing that's been going on in our community, and this panel of brothers that we have this morning, very delighted because I know each one personally. I know the work and the energy that they're putting into it. But we have to be able to hold the powers that be a little more accountable than we've been doing. And that comes from collaborations. And that comes from individuals that are on this call this morning, along with others that are going to be able to do that. Because one thing that you mentioned, and you talked about, Sean, which is very true about the resources, but this is a problem that's from within. So we got to use our own resources. Because if we go to Edmonds right now, there's a lot of people in there right now spending some money on Jordans and other things. It's where we're placing our personal resources, and that these are personal situations. This personally affected you, Sean. You lost your son. I can't look at it any other way and be like, oh, well, that was tragic. And we and think Chaz touched on it earlier, is we've been so desensitized to death that we expect shootings to happen. We think it's normal for someone to get shot in our communities now. It's gotten that bad. So we got to go back to the original structure of the family, the village as the people, and start everyone coming out. Just like this morning, I didn't want to be on the call talking about so many other things that are happening where people are criticizing, they're criticizing the mayor, they're criticizing this person, they're criticizing that. That's not, we got to become solution oriented, and we can't become solution oriented pointing fingers. This is a work that we all have to be involved. These are all our children. This is all our neighborhoods. These are all our communities. This isn't just the clergy. This just isn't the politicians. This isn't just the institutions and the organizations that you guys help run. This has to be a everybody work. And we have to talk about this main thing that nobody wants to talk about, that I'm going to be the bad guy and bring up. That's why we call it real talk. This no snitching policy that people do not understand. Steve Harvey addressed it the best on his show. Snitching is a underground, underworld term, which basically means this is the best way to say it. If we were talking about criminals. If me and Sean went and robbed the bank and I got away, Sean told the authorities where I was at. That is what we would classify as snitching. If me and Sean was on his porch and somebody rolled by and licked off some shots, and then the police came over to the porch later to ask me and Sean what happened, we have an obligation to our community to give the information that is going to get these people apprehended. And once they're apprehended, then it's up to the authorities to make sure that there are laws and policies that stick. I'll go back to an old saying. There is about 15 knuckleheads in every community that is not going to change. And then there's 200 children that they can either affect. We have to allow law enforcement to remove those 15 who are not going to do anything positive in our community so that they do not fixate the 200. And Sean's program, Chaz's program, Jihad's program all help those 200. Because evidently those 15 that are trying to determine to be gangsters, they are not going to change. They have no intention of changing. They have no love for others. They need to be rid from our community. I remember back in the days when Atlanta was having the major problem with gun violence, they changed the law to if you got caught with a gun, unregistered gun, 10 years mandatory. We got to get politicians and everybody involved to understand this is a serious issue. Our women and our kids do not feel safe to walk in communities. It just was a survey that said 52% of the people in Connecticut, not just New Haven, do not feel safe in their communities. This is a national problem. This is a local problem. And these individuals that's on this call have been taking this charge for a long time, but it's time for us to get our whole community wrapped around this. I don't want to keep seeing people get a newspaper and then you're trying to worry about, did you know the person? Then if you didn't know them, it's like, oh, that was messed up. And then you go on with your regular day. No, that's past messed up. That was somebody's son. That was somebody's father. That was somebody's brother. That was somebody's cousin. So that's past messed up. And we have to, this is the reason why I was charged to have this call this morning. We had some difficulties last week. You see, it took me a minute to get up here today, but I thank everybody on this panel because you guys are being solution oriented and your voices are being heard, and we're going to continue to help your voices to be heard. And whatever we have to do to get these resources to these young people, and we have to be able, Chaz, Jihad, Sean, we got to be able to talk to these brothers face to face, those that are doing the crimes. If we think that it's just going to be this helicopter swoop through, grab this person, it has to be, they have to be identifiable. I'll take Jihad back to the days. You remember when you were back in the days, if you did something on your street, there was 2 or 3 grandmothers or aunts or somebody that would be able to identify you. Oh, that was one of the Jones boys that had to do that. We got to get back to the village now because we've allowed, you can't touch the kids, to discipline them. We've done so many things that takes away from us setting an infrastructure for our kids. We are lacking, and we are the ones that have to bring this infrastructure back. So if anybody has any more comments, we have probably about 10 to 15 more minutes. Keep this lively. This is the reason we make this called Real Talk. We want to talk about the issues that other people are scared to talk about, that they're running from. We are here to have this, and this will just be the beginning of a multiple series because of how vital this information is. So I will move on and let others.
Chaz had something that he wanted to add. I'm going to let you add it now.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, you're totally right with the community accountability. We can't wait for everybody else. We got to do it ourselves. And exactly solutions-based. One thing we did, many years ago at Roberto Clemente School, I was in ISS room, and they put me in ISS, and I changed the room to the reflection room. Understanding the suspension of prison pipeline. You come in here, you're getting babysat. Now let's try to fix this problem. And now, almost 20 years later, I get the job at Barnard School, and our principals at the school, the new principals over there, they kind of got it, right? So they like suspension of prison pipeline. Let's change the room. And the room became in-school solutions, right? You come in there, you get social emotional learning. I'm doing restorative justice and restorative practices. Let's fix the problem, how you got here, right? And figure out how not to come back in this room again. Because we don't want to send you home, right? And we don't want you to sit here and just be babysat. So how can we utilize that space for that? And then the Board of Ed changed all the rooms to that, which is phenomenal, but we got to go a step further through this process of what we're doing with the youth. Not only do we meet them where they are and start to foster those positive decision-making strategies, but also we got to teach them how to be real leaders, right? You got to teach them how to be real leaders. No, you can run a business. No, you can really lead, right? Brother Manuel Camacho and our other kids, I don't even have to be nowhere. They got their own community groups going on. They just let me know what they got going on in the city, right? We started to build them to the point where he was a really, really shy person when I first started working with him, right? And now he's a rock star, right? You see this young man, he's just doing it. But I'm saying that to say, as we work with the youth and we help change those behaviors and we get them on the right path, we have to make sure that we're fostering leadership.
You've empowered them.
Exactly. But it can just be something as you got to find something that he or she can lead in. It could be the smallest thing. It's just run in a room or clean up the space or whatever. Find something that they take the helm on. This is yours. You're in charge of it. This is how you run it. One kid's doing the books, one kid's doing this, one kid's, and then they have their own meetings on Sunday. I'm not even invited to. They got about 10, 15 kids in there, and I'm not invited to the meeting. So it got to the point where kids are doing their own thing because we got to the point where it wasn't like one day, of course, it was over the course of years that we forced the decision-making and organizing and all those things. And then now you're leading. You run the meeting, you guys meet together, you tell me what you need. What can I do for you? And that's restorative practices. What do you need from me? And that's when I come back to the meeting. We meet on Wednesdays, uplifting you voices. I'm just there to write stuff down and figure out how do I get those needs met. And that's it. And they tell me what they want to do. And that's it. But you got to foster those leadership qualities and then give them things to lead in and let them do it. And people feel like, when you're doing events and you're doing these things, there's a lot of people out there like Sean, like Jahal, like a lot of, like Maurice, like other orgs that if you reach out to them, like Matt, and say, we need this for the kids, people will give those things. All these years, we just got our 501c3 in August. We've been doing this stuff, just doing it. And how are we able to do it? Because I can call on Sean and say, Sean, we need this for the kids. And Sean gonna come with me and we're gonna use our own money. We're gonna go ask everybody. We're gonna figure it out. But there's Cornell Scott, like every year they pay for our shirts for basketball, right? Because we pull that league off we did every year for 4 years in a row. And we just got people together and say, can you do this piece? Can you do this piece? Can you do this piece? And it all was able to work out. But, building those leaders and getting the community to come together on whatever you're doing, not just doing it yourself. Like, how can we come together and do it? Who has a grill? Okay, how can I get the grill? What I need to do to help you get, so people will give that stuff if we're fostering our leadership and we're reaching out to them.
The village is everything everybody's summarizing has to take a village. So with about 6 minutes left, we're going to go around the room. Everybody give me 2 minutes of some things that solution oriented that you would like to see developed in our community, and how can we get that done? And I'm gonna start with Jihad.
Well, I'm so glad that I think we need to double back and have another conversation about that top tier. They say, 1.5 to 2% of the people are doing a lot of destruction to the community, and we know who they are. We can't put a case on them because people won't talk. So early this year, there was a domestic homicide in Fairhaven Heights, and within 2-3 hours, they had that case solved. Their community wasn't having it. This is the guy, this is the car, this is what happened, whatever. They got him. The community was strong. They stood together. They weren't having it. We got a crew, not a big crew right now, that's causing probably 60 to 75% of the destruction right now in the community. They know the community knows who they are. I've heard their name mentioned 10, 20 times. They cannot put a case on these guys because no one will talk. And they're just causing further and further destruction in the community. And right now, they're enemies to our community right now. I'm not saying I hate them or I don't love them anymore, but right now, they can't be in the community. They have to be taken outside of the community right now because they're not ready. They're too destructive for our community. But I get it. And I pushed this to Senator Blumenthal, and I said, how can people feel protected that, it's not a snitch thing, but if they're harming my community, thus harming me, my ability to function in the community, what can we do to make sure that people are protected? He didn't have an answer. He's an attorney. So there's things that we can do, again, that's going to work. It is comprehensive. The top 1.5, 2% of these people that's doing a lot of the crime, I wouldn't even put it that high. They need to be taken out of the community. And another thing is the average age of people that are getting harmed by gunfire in this community, it's not kids. Average age for a Black male, I think it's about 28 or 29. That's the average age of the person that's getting shot or harmed in this community. We can't tell who the shooter is until they're arrested, but the people that are shot, we know who they are. For Latinos, it's a little bit higher, maybe about 30, 31, and then for white males, it's about 34. So there are people that are coming back in the community with old beef, and they're reigniting this beef again. People who saw each other while they were incarcerated and everything, they act like everything was cool because they're not going to fight. They're going to wait till they arm up, come back to the community, cause further destruction. So mediate. Just mediate. If you got to, don't say, okay, oh, well, we got reentry, so they're about to get out. Let's start working. No, reentry starts as soon as you're sentenced. We got to start working on these guys while they're sentenced so they won't come back. So just really, really quick. Mo, if you and I have a problem and I shoot you, okay, I go to jail, you're traumatized and you're dealing with your physical recovery also in the community. I've changed while I was in jail. I found religion. I may have had a child, whatever it is. I did programs and services. I've changed. You don't know that I've changed. So now I'm getting back out. You may want to harm me because you may think I may come back at you. I may arm up now, even though I may have a job, I'm on supervision, my urines are clean and everything. I may arm up because I don't know if you want to come back at me. But if we just have a mediation or a conversation, and Sean could step in and say, yo, man, Jihad, I don't talk to, Mo, he doesn't forgive you, but he ain't coming at you, man. And Mo, Jihad changed. He ain't even that dude no more, man. Found God. He just want to work. If you're willing to have a conversation, he wants to have a conversation. But if not, then I just want to let you know he wants to send a message that he ain't coming at you. And what's wrong with that? Everybody, the vulnerability and everything can go right down, tell your boys to stand down, everything. But if you feel vulnerable in your community and there's a gun accessible, that's what good people do. Don't good people carry guns because they feel vulnerable? They don't even have beef and they carry guns. You know what I'm saying? So, there's things that we can do. And I think we can further this conversation, at another time. But I appreciate you bringing that out.
Thank you. Chaz, give me 2 minutes.
Well, I think that one major thing we can do is let's start to retrain parenting, right? Everybody needs a little help. And I don't know what that looks like. It could be the social emotional learning and restorative practice. I think that's a good way to go. Is how do we build relationships with our teenagers, with our kids again, with our busy lives? How do we build a relationship with this kid that's tough in my house, that want to run the roost, right? How do we create that relationship? And also understanding that there's trauma, even though I may be a great parent, there's still trauma around us, right? So creating a social emotional learning platform for parenting where now we teach the parents, how to address trauma with your kids. And it doesn't have to be you're a bad parent. It just could be that there's things going on in my neighborhood, my city, COVID, that I can address through this kind of social emotional learning techniques. I think we need to start creating more parenting platforms and somehow make them accessible to the point where people want to come and take the program.
Sean.
As a community, with our own personal accountability first. We need a 20-year comprehensive plan that provides a pathway to success, because this can't be dealt with overnight. If we're looking for overnight success, then we're destined to fail, right? We have to be willing to say we have kids that are 5. We also have kids that are 25. Over the next 20 years, how do we service this entire pipeline situation for a better outcome? We have 8, 9 different areas to work on, from individuals to families, right? We have our economic situations that we have to address, along with all of these other things. And it can't be dealt with in a singular fashion. It's going to take a bunch of committed, organized group efforts, along with community participation and buy-in that is comprehensive to their sustainability and future success, not just a promise that doesn't come through, right? But we need to really be thinking really, really big and really, really bold right now, because nobody's done it in quite a long time for us.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much this morning. And to echo Jihad's sentiments, this is just the beginning of this conversation. We are now using Black media properly. Just yesterday, Paul Bass interviewed Shafiq, who has been in the struggle. He's a retired officer. I worked with him for quite some time when I was the NAACP Stop the Violence coordinator, to identify young people to meet at their homes. So there's so many different strategies that have been used over time. I just think of bringing us together in a stronger relationship. Jazz talked about it all. It's all about relationships. We have single moms working double jobs, so they can't spend time with their sons. We have to step in and pitch in on those things. There's so much work to do, but it has to be community-based. Yes, we need church leaders. Yes, we need politicians, but more than all of that, we need the everyday person that walks on your block and lives on your block to help patrol your own community. Once we realize this is our community and we stop waiting for help to come down, it's not coming from anywhere. These are the faces that you're going to see, and there's many more like ours, females too. They play such a strong role in our community, but they need our help. They need our men to really stand up. And so we will continue to have these type of conversations on our Real Talk show. I'd like to thank Tom Ficklin for giving us this opportunity once a month. And you guys are the community superheroes that will continue to help this charge. We are thankful that starting tomorrow, we have a national holiday of Juneteenth. Use that time this weekend to unite, bond, talk to young people, to get them to see that we come from a rich heritage of kings and queens. And we've allowed the governments and other people to make us feel like we're lower than that. And we have to build that self-esteem back up in our community so people can spread the love and definitely show that we are united as a people to face this very grueling gun violence that has terrified our communities for too long. I thank you, gentlemen. Everybody have wonderful weekends. Happy Father's Day to my brothers. Continue to be the great fathers that you are and leaders in this community. And we'll be on very soon with part 2 to this. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
You too. Happy Father's Day, gentlemen.
Listen, I'm never quitting on my mission. I'm gonna roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gonna be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Let's camera action already.